and also start sharing our meeting slides. Please let me know if you can see the screen. Great, thank you. So welcome back to the SUSTA GBM number 6. And today we have a special guest, Dania, from the president of SUSK, will be talking about the activity of the SUSK, and you'll be able to ask any questions after or during the presentation, whichever you prefer, Dania. The floor is yours.
Oh, thanks. I didn't prepare any slides because we have a lot of slide decks, but I kind of just wanted to talk to all of you, and if anything, I could share my screen, or you guys could head over to our website because it has a lot of information, but I thought it would just be more effective to just have a conversation. So thanks for having me. SUSK, I think this is very similar to SUSTA in the sense that our acronym does not align with the name. Like, we're the Ukrainian Canadian Students Union, which is not SUSK, but in Ukrainian it's Союз Українського студентства Канади. So that's kind of how it I guess it's the Ukrainian name with English letters as our acronym. And as you can see, actually here you have a photo of our map, and so we have it changes each year, but we always say we have around 25 member, we call them USOs, Ukrainian Student Organizations. In Canada, we do not have as many post-secondary institutions as you do in America. And so I'm sure you have a lot of, I spent some time in February and March meeting with some Ukrainian students in America, and it was really incredible to see how many schools you guys have, and how many clubs you have, which is really excellent. But we do span from British Columbia, which is where you can see Vancouver, to Montreal. We haven't gone all the way east of there, but right now with what's happening in Ukraine, we have a lot of newcomers coming to the East Coast, and so we're in the process of setting up Ukrainian clubs there, which is really excellent. And what we really focus on, and what, if you want to call it a mission or vision statement, is to promote Ukrainian language, Ukrainian culture, and advocate for that, and to support Ukrainian student clubs on campus at post-secondary institutions across Canada. And so SUSK is a national board of directors. We have 14 board members on our board. And then from there, we have a past president, which we don't count that as a board member because it's a non-voting position. If you want to call it a board member, sure, that'd be the 15th. And then 1/16th individual would be, we have one paid employee that works for us full-time. And so that's a big part of our board, and that's a big aspect of how we are able to stay so active, is we are all students, right, on this board. It is a requirement for you to be a student, but we do have one paid full-time staffer, and the staffer really does a lot of the work in terms of a lot of email correspondence. We host a Congress every year. It is usually in May. During the pandemic, it was shifted to August just to get it into virtual setting. But we host you can call it an AGM, an annual general meeting, or a Congress or conference each year in May, and it is hosted by a Ukrainian student club. And so these Ukrainian student clubs put forward an application if they would like to host it at their school or in their city, and then our board meets, we go through these applications, we vote on it, and we decide. And we have a template that we send our clubs each year, asking them to follow this template, and a few things that we ask for are, what is a theme that you propose? What would be a general budget? So how much would it cost for people to fly to this city from various major cities across Canada? And some ideas for venues and stuff like that. So just more of like a general outline of where the Congress would be, and that's how we make the decision each year. And that's when we have our election for our new board. So these positions are held for 1 year, our term. You can run for a position again. Yeah.
Tanya, if I may ask questions, how would you
Yeah.
prefer, like interrupting or
You can
rather
just
wait
ask
until-
because to be completely honest with you, Maria, I will talk and talk and talk and talk, and I don't even know how much time I have, so I don't want to waste it. And I don't want to be meaningless. So just interrupt me. Yeah.
Sure. So my first question then will be, what's the purpose of the Congress beside that you elect the new board members?
So we come together. So all students are invited to attend as delegates. Our clubs have a certain vote depending on their membership number. And we invite guest speakers. So we host panel discussions or seminars. And we really, it depends on the theme, and that's kind of the direction that's set. We also use this as an opportunity to set the direction of what we're working on for the upcoming year as a board. So we have resolutions that we go through, we vote on. Our members can propose new resolutions or amendments to these resolutions. And as a board, then we work to achieve these resolutions throughout the year. So we're constantly throughout the year going back to these resolutions and saying, is this something we've accomplished? How are we, or is it not? How are we going to go about accomplishing it? And that sense. So it's really to set the direction of the year. It's also we host a networking night, so you get to network. We host speakers, so you learn stuff, right? This year, like we had a panel, for example, it was in May, we were in Edmonton, we had a panel on contemporary politics in Ukraine, and a few professors were there speaking about some of this stuff. We had the president of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, and so it's educational purpose as well as setting the direction for the upcoming year.
Do you know the topic of the next Congress already?
So we know that it's going to be in Vancouver. We are working on a theme, but it really is, it hasn't been solidified yet, but it is going off of the idea or the slogan that was out there earlier about be brave like Ukraine. That was something that went around. I'm not sure if you guys heard it also in America. That's not our phrase, but we want it to be something like be something like Ukraine. So we're trying to figure that out. And then what we're doing is all of our speaker themes are then based off of that, or the topics that we'll be listening to will be based off of that. So we're looking at integrating art, like how has art helped Ukraine persevere? How has, and then we're like learning about history and how our history kind of plays into what's currently happening now. It's still in the works, but that's kind of how we've done a lot of. Before the war, we were really focusing in the direction of multiculturalism and what it means to be not just Ukrainian, but Ukrainian and maybe mixed heritage. Kind of went on the back burner because of this war. But yeah, that's a good question. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So to kind of go and build off of that Congress, we have this board of directors with 14 voting members and then 2 additionals. And we also have 3 committees. And so we have the Congress Planning Committee. There's a chair of that committee. It's never the president because it's too much to manage. And then we have an advocacy committee, as well as we have a project grants committee. And these are really the 3 kind of main committees. Our board members are always more than welcome to propose committees if they'd like to see something else happen. So for example, during the start of the pandemic, we had a committee that focused on creating toolkits that provided resources for students on how to host a virtual event, how to fundraise in a virtual setting, and kind of shift all of that stuff. Oh, Cabri is here. I didn't know that. Cabri, if you want to talk about advocacy, you're more than welcome to. And shift into that. So yeah, I can talk about those 3 committees if you like. All the information is on our website. Cabria is an individual who joined our advocacy committee. So last year or a year and a half ago, we added a board position. And this was the title of this role is Inclusion and Diversity Officer. And through that, the Inclusion and Diversity Officer chairs the advocacy committee. And Cabria has joined our advocacy committee and now is on the committee for a 2nd year. And so really is a great person to share what that committee does, is right now advocacy is a huge part of our board. So I'd be more than happy to pass it on to Cabria. I didn't know you were here. Hi, Cabria.
Yeah, dude, I'm sorry. I was reviewing my Chinese script for my exam tomorrow. I didn't memorize it and I got the link sent to me, but I was having trouble logging because I didn't have that like the ID number or whatever. So I had to like manually type the address into my Google search bar. My bad, guys. Here, I'll just, oh, I can't. Can someone just enable the screen sharing?
Yeah, sure. Good to
Okay.
see you here.
It's nice to see you guys as well. You guys are looking real vibrant. You guys' Instagram page is looking nice. You know, it's very good. Okay.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Okay, good stuff. Give me 2 seconds. All right. So, can you just, I want to check everybody can see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So one of the things that we work on, Michaela Yarmomotuziak, she's the head of our committee board. So one thing that we focused on, like Danya was mentioning prior to, unfortunately, like the invasion, we're focused on representation of Ukrainians as well as the inclusion of diverse individuals from different backgrounds, myself included. That was something that kind of wanted to see represented. So first things off, before we get to that, we kind of worked on like representation in popular media and stereotypes and reclamation of kind of like what that looks like. And there's obviously like different avenues that we've explored. This doesn't just stop at, of course, like representation. Oh my gosh, why is my screen doing that? Sorry, I'm getting like a red bar across my screen. The other thing we work on as well is the inclusion of in historical events. So importance of like certain actions and events that have occurred within Canada, but also of course in like Ukraine. So this was one that we worked on for the internment and operations. We include like historical facts, life under the internment, where these places were located. And with this kind of format, we post this on our Instagram page. One of our most recent posts actually got reposted on it's called Decolonize Myself. It's a page, an Instagram page that has over 500,000 followers. And what we had posted on there was the highlight for Indigenous Ukrainian community members. So something we worked on was kind of like, what are the experiences of those mixed individuals in the community? Kind of what are their accomplishments? And the idea was to really give representation to individuals from like those diverse backgrounds, that they can have that space within this community, as well as their other identities and how those intersect culturally with like our historical aspects. And then we also had this post, which got a lot of good feedback. These were a lot of Black Ukrainians who are from Ukraine. And even Zan Belenyuk actually messaged us and liked this post. And so we got good feedback on it. So the idea is to get more people engaged, because when we started with, when we were starting with this committee, I think if I remember correctly, we had about 1,500 or 1,700 followers on our Instagram page. I believe now we're a little over 2,000, like 200 or something like that. Yeah. So we had an increase in activity on the page, and that's kind of where we want to go with this committee, is to expand the community. This is for a number of reasons. It's for the historical, it's for the events, but it's also for support. Because if we didn't have, prior to this post, the highlighting of Indigenous Ukrainians and also reposting Indigenous Ukrainians, we wouldn't have gotten support from the Indigenous community, I think, as much as we would have, because one individual, her name is Kendra Rosichuk, and she's a well-known activist in the Indigenous community here in Canada, and she reposted actually for fundraising for the Ukrainian community, to which we ended up getting a lot of folks who ended up donating to the community from communities that we've never even heard of. So the idea is to expand for that kind of support. And then another aspect with, like, for example, the Ukrainian stereotypes and whatnot, we also made a list which incorporates, sorry, wrong thing, my bad. Sorry, I had a script, guys. I've run out of words on the script. It was, I half finished it, my bad. But recently we finished the Holodomor package. So this was all Michaela though, because we were all a little too tied up with other things, but Michaela created a Holodomor package. So that included, different parts of Ukraine where these events happened, how many people were affected, how we can bring about awareness across the country. The package will be sent out soon. So basically what our community focuses on is not only making Instagram posts, but also creating awareness, reaching out to different communities. For example, we are working on currently, like coming up, we just had our meeting. We do have meeting every bi-weekly. is that the Iranian community, with what's going on in Iran for their regime, is we're looking to create a post that talks about the flight that was crashed, that was bombed out of the sky, and about the unity of the community there in terms of like what we're aiming to accomplish, which is to remove these regimes so that people can live freely. And so again, the idea is unity, representation, and the diversity of voices that'll bring more members into the community, and then that results in better support financially, and also in better support for, like, you know, calls to action for democracy and other issues like that. But it also helps our community as well to have a better understanding what other communities are going through. So it's kind of what our committee does. And I think a lot of the 3 committees that we have kind of do similar roles within their own respective kind of like bubbles, but we all kind of overlap with each other in terms of what we're trying to accomplish, which is like the betterment of the Ukrainian community, but specifically for students, of course. So yeah. Other than that, I'll leave it at that because I don't want to talk too much in case you guys either have questions or Dania has other things, of course, to add because she's usually the one who does these things. But yeah, so that's what our committee does. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I probably missed just a few things, but I think that really kind of covers what we've been up to. So yeah.
I have a quick question. I want us to go further before we forget it. So you said you have one employee who's actually like paid employee, and also you meeting for the Congress depend on the year, like in which who's financially covering these expenses, the employee and the Congress itself.
Yeah, good. And I can keep talking about more SUSK stuff, but that, Kavir, thank you. You did a really good job. And Kavir does a lot of good work for advocacy, which is awesome. We really appreciate you.
Don't flatter my ego too much. It'll get too inflated and I'll have to like pop that.
Yeah. So SUSK is a member organization with the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, UCC, which I think you have something very similar in America. And this position, it's called a national coordinator, the SUSK national coordinator. It is shared with the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. So this individual would work for both SUSK and UCC. And our offices are in Ottawa. So we have an office at the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. And the national coordinator sits in that office. So this individual has an office and all of that. And the costs are split with the Ukrainian Canadian Congress and with us. So we don't pay the full salary, we pay half, and we share that workload as well. But in a way that we make that work, for example, is we have weekly meetings, UCC SUSK weekly meetings, where the national coordinator gives us an update on what they've worked on for the week for both of our organizations, and a very open line of communication with the CEO of UCC and myself as the 2 bosses to this paid employee, and how we financially are able to have money to pay a salary is through our endowment fund. So our endowment fund is, and let me see if I share my screen, I can show you a little bit on our website. But our endowment fund is a account. So this is our endowment fund website that's linked to our website. This is an account that it's through an organization called the Shevchenko Foundation. So I know it's a little tricky because you're in America, so I don't know what you have in terms of similar organizations, but the Shevchenko Foundation is a charity. SUSK is a non-for-profit registered with the federal government. We're not a charity. And so the Shevchenko Foundation holds our money through an endowment fund. And so the idea of what an endowment fund is, we cannot access the money. So when people donate, for example, we have a Giving Tuesday campaign happening right now. Whenever anyone donates to SUSK, they donate through the endowment fund, through Shevchenko, that's found at Shevchenko Foundation. And the money that we can access is the interest that we accrue each year on that fund. So the goal and really the reasoning behind that is we're students, we have very high turnover. Having a stable employee allows us to mitigate that turnover because we have a new election each year, right? And we can't just access the money. So in the future, if we have a board and they decide to blow their brains out, right, I'm being dramatic, but just want to dip into all these funds and kind of lose all those funds and spend them on stuff, they can't. You can't just say, I want to take out $100,000 this year and do X, Y, Z. You can only access the interest, right? And so as you grow the endowment fund, you will make more money because it's a percentage on that amount that's in the bank account. So our goal is $1 million, and we're not at $1 million. We're at, it's down here. I don't know if this is up to date, but we're at almost $250,000. And the interest that we gain on this is what we solely put forward to paying the national coordinator salary. Now, as we grow our endowment fund, the goal is to also put that money towards more projects and fund more internal projects and operating funds. So, and last year we were actually able to, because the markets were so good, and this is an interest payment, we were able to do so and have a little bit of extra money. But that really is what how we invest in the longevity of SUSK. And so we have one of our board members' positions is an alumni director. And so our alumni director's main role is to grow the endowment fund and work on alumni engagement and really sell to them. These alumni were part of SUSK. Why is it important? What did you gain from SUSK? Why is it important for you to continue to invest in this organization? And through having it through the Shevchenko Foundation, which is a very well-known foundation in our Ukrainian Canadian community, it holds that legitimacy and that security that these funds are being donated to this secure account and this secure platform. And so that's really how we allow for a lot of these fundings. We also, so our project grants committee, one of the other committees is, we have a grant that our Ukrainian Student Club members can apply for. It's $250 each year, up to $250. They have to prove to us that they spent that much money. And so that allows us to fund projects that happen on campuses, on university and college campuses across Canada. And so that some of that money does come from our endowment fund, but we also apply for external grants to cover those costs. And one of the large grants that we apply to in Canada is through the Shevchenko Foundation. So they also provide us grants. So that's kind of how it works. And since they're a charity, they can issue tax receipts on behalf of any donations made to us, even though we're a non-for-profit and we can't do that ourselves, which is a big thing that donors look for when they make donations. So that's a little bit about our endowment fund. The other main thing, kind of, I guess, going off of advocacy is when the war started in February, and I know you could also say 2014, but since February onwards, our student union has become the main body that governs for post-secondary students in the country. There is no other organization in Canada that does this work. And so that's really, like Cabria was saying, our following grew. Like, we almost doubled in followers. We were all over the news, doing broadcast live everywhere, organizing all the rallies, inspiring youth, and advocating for students. And so it really became 3 groups of students. And so we have, if I go to, of course, I go to SUSK's website. We created this Ukraine 2022 tab. And we created this resource page here. If you click on this graphic, or really anywhere, and you click here to find support, we created this spreadsheet that, I don't know if you could see
this was a very lengthy spreadsheet, let me tell you.
Yeah.
I remember working on this with everyone. It was like, I think we did this for a whole week straight just to get all the information. It had like pink, blue, green, red. And then finally everything was like white, and we had feedback from different institutions. And it was, I remember it was quite the work and work in progress. It needs to be
updated. It needs to be updated. It's a working doc. So this was our way, because we had so many people coming to us and asking us what's available at this school, where are we at, and where do we need to go for advocating for students. We centralized it in one place in this document that's available on our website, and very easy to email, because I still get emails and from very random people. I just send them this link, and it saves a lot of time. And so this shows all the universities and colleges that are offering support and what that support is, and then links. And then we also have housing, and then both those tabs translated in Ukrainian as well. And at the bottom of the document, there's support from organizations, like maybe like federal government organizations or other programs that aren't associated with post-secondary institutions, but still support these students as well. And so we became that organization that advocated for Ukrainian Canadian students who are Canadian citizens with Ukrainian heritage that were affected by the war. The second group was Ukrainian students from Ukraine that were here prior to February 24th, studying on a student visa. And then the third group was students who want to come from Ukraine and continue their studies in Canada after February 24th. And they all have different varying degrees of support. For example, students coming from Ukraine to Canada, we want them to be able to transfer their credits. So all of that money and that time and energy that they put into their studies in Ukraine shouldn't just go to waste. They should be able to, for example, calculus in Ukraine should be calculus in Canada, right? First year calculus should be first year calculus anywhere. So can the school make that exception for them to be able to just say, okay, you already have that course, you don't need to do it again, you don't need to pay for it again. The other thing is fees. We've been advocating for these students to not pay international fees, but pay domestic fees. And we are receiving very different answers. And so this is a great resource because when we meet with we've been meeting with universities and colleges, we've been meeting with universities and colleges are governed provincially. I have a chat. Anyways, and so we meet with these ministers and we say to them, look, this is the support that we need. Oh, that's why everyone's fine. I kind of love Canada. Sorry, I couldn't find the chat button.
Dania, sorry for
Yeah.
interrupting you. So you're saying like we're meeting and you're advocating. Does it mean that the board meets and advocates, or is
No.
it like the paid person or Ukrainian Canadian Congress?
It's me. It's
Okay.
mostly me, Cabria. It's me. It's sometimes it will be our past president and myself. But yeah. It's hard because nobody knew, like no one was prepared, right, for this. And so we don't have a board set up for this, but we have everyone doing stuff, right? Cabria is doing all of the social media stuff and all of this, right? I'm doing the media on the news. I'm doing it on in newspapers. Cabria was in newspapers, right? They were reaching whoever they can reach. Cabria was the president of the Humber College Ukrainian Student Club and was dealing with a whole different host of things, right? And so it was really with the ministers and stuff like that, it was me, but with other like universities and colleges on campus, it was the presidents of the Ukrainian clubs. And so they were turning to us for support, and Cabria was one of those. I wanted to say something else, but now I don't remember. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought, but yeah, so this was a really major part of what we were doing. And the other thing I want to mention, so something we're currently working on now to continue to support these students who are coming from Ukraine is we've started working with a startup called Help. We just launched this last week, but we started this project in the summer. And they are academic coaches who know the admission deadlines. They know the application process of what do you need in a supplementary application. They know the timelines, and they know how to get you student visas. They know all those kind of things and scholarships. And so they're working with us to help those students with that process. And then they're passing on their contact information to SUSK so that we can get them connected with Ukrainian students on the ground when they choose their school and they get accepted. And then those Ukrainian students on campus can act as their mentors to say, this is where you can go find groceries. This is the gym. This is the library, right? And have that support going forward. And so that's something we just launched. And that's going to be a big road because we now need to identify students in Ukraine. We need to find funding because students, we're trying to cover their fees for the applications, because every time you apply, you need to pay an application fee to the university or college. That's really the main things. We have a lot of little things. We have a book club. Here's a podcast that we have on Spotify. SUSK is really built on this newsletter called Student that was started in the 50s when SUSK started. And it was a very political organization. And that's how the organization was it started with this newspaper. And the whole idea is we are a national-wide newspaper. You can write whatever you want and it will be published to a national audience. If you go to a national newspaper in Canada, they might not publish it, but we will. And we will share it to the nation. And so Student is that. So we have this newspaper that comes out and we have a digital copy, and so here, for example,
Mhm.
This is one from our Congress. And then our student editor, which is another board member, and these get printed as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Danya,
yeah, and
I
it's in a
have a-
podcast. Yeah.
I have a question. So we talked a little bit about the members of SUSK, USOs.
Mhm.
So do you have any broad or very concrete idea of what are those chapters doing on their campuses? What kind of activities they're doing
Everything.
right now? And like in the past, like half a year, let's say, and what they regularly do before February 2022?
Cabby, you want to answer that?
I would love to answer that question. Okay, so prior to the invasion, things we were focusing on campuses a lot of the times would be cultural things. I say things a lot, sorry guys, but cultural events. So one activity that we did at Humber at the time was we did, I forget how to call it, but like they're like the Lemko necklaces. So we reached out to one of the girls from the Indigenous Center that I go to, and I asked her, since we have very similar ways to make the necklace, could you teach the very basics? So we brought her in. We did a Zoom since it was COVID. Obviously, understandable, couldn't do it on campus, and we taught the students who were participating that day. Everyone got a kit. I drove around and delivered them. So you had beads and activities. You make the kit, and then you wear it or you take a picture of it, and then we post about it for an activity. Another activity we did, again, cultural event, was teaching non-Ukrainians and Ukrainians alike how to cook Ukrainian food. So what we did was outreaching to communities, community organizations. So just down the street from our school is the Ukrainian St. Demetrius Orthodox Church. But at our school, some campuses are like this, is they don't allow you to have your activities off campus. So we had to really argue and fight and explain to them the importance of like churches within the community that used to help with immigration. And we got approved. So we're the only club at Humber that's allowed off campus. It's literally 4 minutes off campus. It's not really off campus, but we went there, we used their kitchen, and that was where we were going to make food. We also this year we'll be hosting a movie there because now with COVID we can do in person again. So a lot of what we were doing prior was cultural events and kind of just bringing community members together to be like, hey, this person, you don't know them, but they're on the same campus as you. Maybe you want to be friends. Maybe that gives you a sense of belonging. Maybe you feel less alone being in a big city, because Toronto's population, the Greater Toronto Hamilton area, is 7.4 million people. So it can get really big really fast, and you can kind of feel like you're just like alone. And then afterwards, when the war started, obviously our focus changed. Like Danya was speaking, she was advocating on the news. Like Danya was on the TV like almost every day. And what we would do as presidents is we would go to Danya and be like, hey, at our school, we have 14 homeless students. What do we do? Danya was trying to get, Dunlop to give off some funds so we could provide that housing and that support. It wasn't happening. So what we ended up doing was I went out and I found housing for the students myself. And so we ended up getting those students housing for the summer. So those were some of our activities. Now we've kind of, during that, though we still stayed kind of in the mode of unification. So we provided opportunities for students to come together and to make, like, they took the ribbons and they like made little pins. And then we brought those to an event where one of our members put up paintings and pictures that her family were sending her to, and sold them at school as a way of raising funds. And then those pins that all of the students came together to make, we then sold them to make donations, and then we donated the money. So our activities were still surrounding with the idea of like students coming together. So that was kind of what we did before and after. And now, like, we're still obviously going through it, but we've kind of changed back to, we recently did a market, like a, what do you call that in Ukrainian? Like the market.
A bazaar. You did
That's the one. Thank you. The bazaar. And we did it at the church, and we had church. Yamarok, that's the one. I didn't want to say it, but I wasn't sure. Okay, good stuff. That's the one. Okay, thank you. So we had everyone come to the church, but prior to that, like for 2 days, so on Thursday, we got all the students to come together and paint like pots, to do like, they put needles in like a cork, and they drew like a picture of Ukraine and did the trizub and all that. And then I baked mead babka, like honey cakes. And then we, on the Saturday, brought it to the church, sold it to community members, and sold it to other students. And then we took those funds, which, mind you, the money we got to initially pay for all of that came from the SUSK's like USO funding. And we deducted $1 for every registered member. And then we just sent everything and we get refunded. And anyways, so it gives us money that we can then use for other things during the year for our activities. And then, so our next event activity coming up is a Ukrainian scavenger hunt. So there's a bunch of like sculptures that were made by Ukrainian students like years ago. And basically we're giving them hints and they have to go and find them. And forever, however many of these like locations they locate on campus, they get like a point. And if they can get, let's say, all 10 of these locations, we're going to be giving them like a gift card, like a $10 or $15 gift card to like Tim Hortons or something like that. So the idea is to keep them engaged. Other things we do too as a collective. So I created like a, what do you call it, their Instagram group chat with all of the Ukrainian student clubs in Toronto. And so we kind of will send each other events that are happening at each other's schools that, regardless if you're a student or not, you can participate in. And so if, for example, like you're in a city that's very densely populated and then you have multiple Ukrainian student clubs within a city, you can kind of you can work together to create like your own events. Like when we did our rally, we called it the Next Generation Rally. We had 7 different universities from the Greater Toronto Hamilton area within like a 1.5 hour radius that all came together in front of the Russian embassy to protest. And then recently, I think it was like yesterday, there was a Y2K Zabava, which was hosted by Chast, which is like this band in Lux, these 2 Ukrainian bands. And basically like our clubs will promote these Zabavas, and then all the students from different schools come together, they party, you know, whatever. And a lot of them have become friends. Like you go on their Instagram pages and all of a sudden they have 100 mutual friends. Like it's a really great way to network and to support each other. That's kind of what we do on a club level. But a lot of what we do, we have to feed it through SUSK. We have to be like, hey, is this appropriate? You know, should we do this? Do you think it'd have a good turnout? Have you heard good feedback on this event? Now at York, this year, what we're focusing, because now I'm at a new school, I'm at York University, we're doing a poker night and we're going to be doing a karaoke night. And the idea too is just finding different locations where also sometimes free events are happening. So Karma Barrel House, it's like this restaurant downtown. On every Friday, they have karaoke. So now our clubs are trying to coordinate a day where like we should once a month go and all do karaoke together. So that's kind of a really, sorry, I know that took a few minutes to explain, but there's like lots of different stuff you can kind of plan out. The best way we found doing it in terms of format was we literally created like an Excel sheet and we said, okay, January, we're going to do one event. Like February, we're going to do one event. Okay, this week is going to be reading week. This month, we're not going to do any activities, but we're going to promote some webinars. And these webinars could be on how to develop your resume. They could be on like a bunch of different like things, such as there's this one for the Alberta University Student like leadership summit. It's a 3-day event that happens virtually that's hosted by a province, 3 provinces over. And you can get a certificate that says, you know how to do leadership and all that kind of stuff. And it's good to add to your resume. And then we kind of plan it out like that. And that's what we did at Humber, and that's what we're doing now at York. And then we just put up posters kind of around the campus to promote these kinds of activities with QR codes, so it's easily sign upable for like even non-Ukrainians who just want to participate and have fun, make new friends.
Okay, sounds good. Great. Thank you very much for such detailed answer. Actually, this is all good stuff, and I clearly can see how it engages the community, like keeps the participation. I think that has been a pain point, not only in Ukrainian clubs, but in general in student clubs in any community. Artem, you have a question? Sure, go ahead.
Hey guys, yeah, really impressed with whatever you guys do in Canada. Like, it's really cool stuff. And my question would be, even though you guys don't have that many colleges, like 20 something is an impressive number. And my question is, how do you guys keep the network working together? How do you keep the clubs engaging with your organization? And if there are any benefits or anything about it.
Yeah, that's a challenge for us. So it's a good question. One of our board members, their position is internal relations director, and the main role and responsibility of that is to continue to grow our membership. So either start new clubs or revive ones that have fallen inactive. And same thing as SUSK, like they do their elections each year, right? Because as a student, you're only in school for, depends what, 2, 3, 4 years, right? And so it's hard. And some years clubs, the Ukrainian club on campus falls apart, and it kind of stops and it goes inactive, and then someone comes along and brings it back. And so our internal relations director, that's their job. It's to work on starting new clubs or reviving clubs. And really Congress is what brings us together, and it kind of motivates us and keeps us going because we're in person, right? This is, otherwise it's all virtual, our board of directors, because we're across the country. And the other thing is we have three other positions we have on our board is Vice President West, Vice President East, and Vice President Central. And so these we call them regional VPs. They work to stay in contact with the USOs that are located in their region. So, and it's just the country's like split into 3 sections basically. And so it's their job to get the new contact information for whoever the president is for that club that year. And we've done, and in terms of keeping up communication throughout the year, like we've done various different things. We had a Discord going during the peak pandemic, where all members of USOs were on there, and then they had their own channels for their own schools, and that was great. It's really not used as much now. And that's something we've talked about, kind of reviving and the pros and cons to that. We find Instagram to be good, like Instagram DMing our clubs is much more effective than emailing. But it is the regional VP's job to host, like they do meetings with them. They communicate with that region. We do something called USO Spotlight Series. So we have in each region, our regional VP reaches out to 1 or 2 USOs or 3 or however involved and committed they are to this initiative, and they record a video and they ask them to speak on what projects they're working on, what is something that worked really well, what is something that they would have done differently, and kind of share those ideas. And so we keep them kind of active and their ideas out there in that way too. Yeah, but it is a challenge. It's hard. It's always changing because there's always new students and people graduating and all that. So it's always going to be a challenge, right? Just because it's the nature of the timeline that people are in this club and in this position for.
Yeah, great question, Artem. Thank you. I actually have a follow-up to the previous topic of discussion. So do you know about any fundraising activities that the clubs are doing on campuses, and in the sense that fundraising and donating money for any purposes that are happening supporting Ukrainians?
Yeah, I mean, they all do their own things. Very classic is selling vareniki, like very classic. That became a little challenging during the pandemic, but like that's what I used to do on campus, and it was a hit because students, we did it like fresh, or we at one point we would make them and we'd freeze them and then we'd sell them as like student food. You can just throw in your back of your freezer, and that was a hit too. But that takes a lot of work. It's hard to make vareniki, and it takes a lot of work. I know, for example, the University of Winnipeg has been making blue and yellow ribbons. And what they do is they've approached local businesses, like little coffee shops around campus and other stores that students go to, and have asked if they could set up a donation box similar to, maybe this is a Canadian poppies for Remembrance Day. I'm not sure if you do that in America, but it's like basically people can put in however much money they want to donate to Ukraine or to the club or whatever it is. Yeah, there you go, Cabra too. And they get a blue and yellow ribbon that they can wear on their jacket. And they've fundraised like thousands of dollars doing that, and it costs next to nothing to buy blue and yellow ribbon. And they get together, they play Ukrainian music, they glue it, and they glue a pin. Yeah, Vancouver was knitting blue and yellow hats. That's something that they did. Queens was making a few Putin bracelets or Slavo Ukraini bracelets or something and selling those. This is a lot more kind of now with what's happening in Ukraine to fundraise money, but people would do bar nights. People would, yeah, sell vareniki.
What about bar nights?
Like you host bar nights, you can sell tickets or something and donate that money somewhere, stuff like that. So and this is a really good question, because something that we've heard feedback from is creating, because we have these toolkits, and one of them would be creating like a fundraising guide for our USOs. I know the University of Alberta, for example, and this is really cool. They have, if you're part of their Ukrainian club, they have like a membership card that you get, and their club has over 100 members. Like they're huge. And yeah, they're very, like, so we don't have a lot of numbers and members, but we have large clubs because in Canada we don't have a lot of schools, right? Anyways, and so they have a membership card, and that card gets you discounts at certain stores. So they've actually approached like the local Subway Sub or Starbucks or Tim Hortons and said, will you offer Ukrainian students a discount if they're part of this club? And somehow they got that going. Cabri probably knows more. And so this entices people to join the Ukrainian club, right? And it's open to anyone. You don't need to be Ukrainian. You just need to enjoy the culture and want to immerse yourself in it, right? And you get this Ukrainian student club member card, and then you can go to certain places and get a discount when you buy things. So that's something they've done, which is really great. And other clubs really want to do that too, because it's such a great example. Cabri, I don't know if you have more to add to that.
Muno, I was going to mention Muno. We have the Ukrainian National Federation, but youth branches. So any members that are registered that are youth, I don't know if it's only youth or if everybody, but depending on certain restaurants and certain bars that you go to, they give you 10% off if you're registered as a member, and you pay your membership fee a year. I believe it's $10, right? Yeah. $10, and you get discounts. And we were really pushing that at our club because we're just a 30-minute walk from the nearest restaurant that would offer a discount at Muno Bistro that just opened on Evans Avenue. And a few of our members registered as Muno members. And now Muno also has on Friday nights, they do volleyball for 3.5 hours. And so they'll send out a text, be like, hey, we're playing, we got the gym tonight. You're going to play volleyball, and 20 plus people will show up and they'll play volleyball. And so that's also another idea too. I remember they did the Dynamo soccer tournament just recently, and basically groups of Ukrainians and even Polish students joined in. We had the Macedonians because we did outreach through different clubs. So we were like, hey, Mongolian, Students Association, hey, Macedonian Students Association, you guys want to play soccer? And they had to pay, I think it was $300 or something, but each member, when you break it down, if you have 12, 13 people playing, it was $20-$30 a person. And then I have no idea where that funding went. I think it was SUSK or something, or different, a Ukrainian federation or something.
Ryerson, TMU.
Ryerson, okay, yeah. So their clubs or something, they took those funds and then they use it for club stuff, or they put it back in endowment funds and stuff like that. However, they choose to move it around. And then that creates the renewable revenue to continue club activities for the following year as well. And on that note, I actually wanted to mention, we use the Ukrainian Credit Union here in Canada. So most clubs have a club account where the money goes for each club. And I know you guys have the Ukrainian Federal Credit Union. So you guys, that would be your bank that you would go to. Each club would set up an account, and then the money would go into those accounts, and through the year they use them, and then they provide their receipts like Danya was mentioning to prove that they've used their funds. And then in the following year, let's say the president graduates or moves on, it's only just, all it is it's up to them to then give the credit card and then change the name over from them to the new president. And that's how they continue using their funds. And I would assume that would, because I read through what UFCU does, and it's the exact same thing as UCU. So that would be your bank that you would go to, that you could trust, I guess, in terms of it staying within the community. And then also kind of an equivalent to Shevchenko Foundation is the US Ukraine Foundation. They've been around for about 30 plus years. And they not only support folks in Ukraine, but they also do a lot of humanitarian aid, civic and economic development within Canada, within America and Ukraine, as well as advocacy and historical and cultural education. So they might be someone good to reach out to ask if they do similar work to Shevchenko. And then that way you could figure out how you could access funding for for SUSTA. So that's all I had to say.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing tips. In the interest of time, we usually try to keep this meeting 1 hour long. So we're almost at 9 right now. I'm not suggesting that we stop talking, but if anyone needs to leave, that's perfectly fine. I guess I would like to ask one more question. Have you ever done kind of a national fundraising campaign where all the clubs, let's say USOs, all or majority of SUSK would raise funds for a mutual cause?
Yeah,
except for endowment, but the fund actually to donate
for themselves.
either
Yeah,
not
we did
really
that. So,
for Ukraine.
okay, so we haven't done it directly for Ukraine. All the profits that we made from Congress this year were donated to Ukraine. And so that was potentially maybe answering your question. But we do a virtual Koleda campaign each year, and the sole purpose of this is to fundraise money for USOs, and not for SUSK. And so what we do is, and this started during the pandemic because you couldn't go Koleduvate, we create, like our board creates a koleda, so we'll get on a Zoom call, record it, or we do it individually, and then someone edits all of us into like one screen. And then our USOs do the same thing. They each sign up for a different carol, and they will virtually come together, sing their carol, and then we send this to our alumni, to our membership, and ask them to donate. And so it's almost like they're virtually knocking on your door instead of, and it was really nice because families would sit down during the pandemic when they couldn't be with their families, and they'd put on this in the background. And we made a YouTube playlist so people could access it, and they donated through a GoFundMe page for that. And then what we did was we just took the costs, however many clubs participated, we split it by that, divided by that number, and gave them their share, and each transferred them. And so that's kind of it. That's an example of a national-wide fundraising campaign, but it wasn't for Ukraine. But Congress was for Ukraine.
And Congress has a paid attendance.
It's a paid attendance, yes. And so we find sponsors. And so usually, like, our goal is always to break even, but we usually fundraise to the point where we find sponsors to the point where we want to make a profit, because we also need a general operating budget for the year on top of our endowment fund and our national coordinator. So we generally take that money for ourselves and use that money, but this year we made the decision to donate it to Ukraine.
Great. Any other questions, comments?
I guess I would have a question that might be of interest for myself and maybe other people. That how do you guys balance your other like life's aspect and work while leading all these not full-time positions?
It's a good question. I think I'm burning out. Like, I think this week I've realized I either need to go to the doctor, get my blood work done, or I'm burnt out. It's hard. It's really hard, but I love, like, this was the job, I would do this because I've learned so much about myself. I've tried so many new things. Like, I studied chemistry in university, and I do donation pitches. I like to alumni, right, for our endowment fund. I ask people for money, which is a hard thing to do, but you learn and you get used to it. I am on the news. I speak at conferences. I do stuff like this. We bring together youth. We advocate. We try to make a difference and a change. And you learn. And people used to say this to me before I started in this role, but you learn how to make mistakes. You learn how to do things like schedule a meeting, for example, and you have the opportunity to make mistakes and learn from them. And these skills you'll use in your job. And when you make these mistakes in your job, you'll get fired, versus when you make the mistakes in a volunteer position, you learn so that you are better at your job. That's kind of how I see it. And I also feel like the work we do is very impactful. And every day I wake up, and just by sending an email, just by attending a call, just by making a post, from that small scale to bigger scale things we do, we're helping to fight our fight and do our part in helping Ukraine. That's how I see it, right? And I think that's kind of what motivates me, because it is really hard. And the other thing I'll say is you need to set time for yourself. Like, I book, my calendar is SUSK, and now I need to book like Danya time. Because, for example, today I thought to myself, okay, let's wake up, let's make these slides for this SUSTA meeting. Then I stepped back and I said, sure, I can make slides. That's going to take me an hour, or I can use that hour to go for a walk outside and get some fresh air. And the meeting will be just as good, right? And so you have to kind of be efficient and pick and choose your battles. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Kebri, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Or I'm with it, but yeah, I don't know. Personally, Danya knows I'll rail myself into a wall most of the time. Danya's actually the one who's usually like, take a break. There was actually a time where I was so strung out trying to find everyone housing. I called Danya and she was like, I don't want to see the green online but symbol on your account. I want you to put your phone away, and I want you to eat some food and like sit down and have like, a drink of water. She's like, because you sound raspy. So to be fair, like, yeah, what I'll do in the morning is I wake up, I check my email first to see if there's anything in. I know there's nothing in until usually 10 a.m. So it's kind of my sweet spot. I'll wake up, then I get on the bus, then I'm there, I'll read over some notes for school. I'll get to school, I'll be in class. I finish my first class, Then I'll check my emails. If there's anything I need to send, I send it. But I kind of follow what Danya does now, is like, I'll make a schedule. I'll try to stick to it. And if it doesn't stick to it, I look at the more immediate things, which is for sure school. Danya always says to everyone, she's like, guys, prioritize your school over everything and anything. Cause like us being successful in the community means that like later on, we can like be those successes in the community that can like bring back support for our community. So it's not like if you miss this one opportunity, like that's it, it's an end all. So making a schedule, trying to stick to it, but if you can't, like shifting around your priorities, so you make sure school gets done first, but always think like to yourself, if you have, let's say it's Friday or Saturday and you're going to go out and party, sure, you can go out and party. That's no problem. Like definitely go and do that, you know, relax. But think to yourself, maybe I can't send this email on Monday or on Wednesday. Tell the person, be like, I can't send you this email this week. I thought I was going to be able to get it done. I know this is due next Monday. I'll send you an email Friday night, because you know you're going to go out partying. Like you don't have anything like school related on that day. Just do it at the end of the week. If it's due on the Monday, just push it till the end of the week so you can just focus on the schoolwork first. So yeah, I don't know. I'm with Danya though. That's what I would do. But yeah, make sure you take time to eat. Sometimes I forget to shower, especially with like recent, like I'm not joking, I really did. I went to the Iran and Ukraine freedom protests. I got home, had to do schoolwork, woke up, and I was like, it's like 3 a.m. I was like, oh, I forgot to shower. Like I get so strung out, I forget to do things. So yeah, putting aside the time and then really planning it out helps you remember to do the basics. Like, and that's really important, just to get the basics done.
The other thing I just really quickly wanted to add. Oh, sorry, Bogdan, if you want to go. It's okay, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm talking while I'm mute. Yeah, that's a typical. I had 2 questions to something you said previously. So one question about your Vareniki night. So you said that you make them and then you sell them. Do you make an event out of making them? Is that another activity? Because it's to
yeah,
me
we do
that
it like
would
as a
seem
club.
like very entertaining. Yeah, like.
Oh, interesting. Well, we've just done it as a club, but it would be interesting to actually invite others.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you know, like that's part of a culture that you kind of like want to teach other people, and you know, like get people engaged. I'm just curious because to be honest, we had our first meeting of this quarter. I thought I'll make Vareniki for the club, but we had like somewhat 30 or 40 people. So I just went to Uzbekistani store to buy Ukrainian Vareniki from. Like, I know it's kind of weird setting. And then I know. And then a second question I had, I don't remember which one of you mentioned, are you working with indigenous or native communities?
That's the
You mean
yeah, that Cabri can talk about that.
Yeah, you mean Ukrainian communities, or you mean like actual Canadian indigenous communities?
Yeah, so in Canada, like so my dad has Indigenous ancestry, so I participate in the Indigenous community. Some of my cousins like are status, some are not. Like it's just how it is. So a lot of Indigenous Ukrainians live out in the more, I'd say, like the prairie area. Because when settlers first came over in Canada, a lot of what happened with like Canada was discriminating against Ukrainians. And when there was like oppression, like that was occurring, so they shut down the churches here. They shut down the news presses. Languages, Ukrainian language is illegal here in Canada. Basically during the Great Depression, because it was so pervasive with the Natural Resources Act of 1930, where they were charging you specifically certain demographics, so Ukrainian and Indigenous folks who are trying to ship their material like grain and food to central Canada, so like the like Ontario and Quebec, they were charging them like up to 10 times more. It was artificially inflated in order to keep them impoverished. So Ukrainians kind of created this bond between Indigenous communities where they were actually trading food and whatnot. Our headscarves, we call them babushkas here. And that's because of like, when they also call them kukum scarves. So kukum scarves is like a Cree word for grandmother. And it was a relationship building between Indigenous and Ukrainian women to say like solidarity, that we would like help them during certain times. So we actually have a lot of shared beadwork, a lot of shared food, a lot of shared like family members and stuff like, and we actually have like, we made a list, our advocacy committee, of over 100 and some Indigenous Ukrainian, just like individuals. And so that accounts, you know, think of their families, that's like hundreds. And what we did is we wanted to promote to other folks who are mixed ancestry that like they have a relationship, like they have a place in the Ukrainian community, because growing up, for myself, like I'm from lots of different mixed heritages, right? It felt kind of hard to get involved because like as a first wave and a first wave Ukrainian, because of internment camps, because of that oppression of language, I didn't have like, I knew the language, like, but it's a Ukrainian Canadian dialect. And it's like, there's differences in words, differences in sentence structures and things like that. And Indigenous Ukrainians that I had met who have status and whose communities, like they actually come from, they're recognized by their communities and they live on reserve. They were like, you know, I don't know a single thing about my Ukrainian family other than I have the last name, or my grandfather came over after World War II, but he integrated into this community because the Ukrainian community in this area wasn't very prominent. So there's those relationships. They're not necessarily like reserves or anything like that, but it's a lot of Ukrainians would live around the reserves and be close to these places. Don't get me wrong, like there was some friction because like Ukrainians are still settlers and they were still given the land illegally through the government. And then Ukrainians have this very like interesting relationship to land, but it's also still Indigenous land. And so as a result, you know, those relationships kind of happened. Like this one elder, his name is Elder Francis Whiskey Jack. When he was in residential school, he was sent to work on a Ukrainian farm, which like for a lot of Indigenous communities that happened, but they weren't actually paid. A lot of times they were being abused or it was forced labor, but on Ukrainian farms, they weren't abused and they were actually paid money. And they were paid very small sum, of course, but they were still paid. And this Ukrainian family gave Elder Francis Whiskey Jack actually a pig to bring back to his family on the reserve, which was like a big no-no. If the Indian agent had found that out, like he would have been severely punished. His family could have been put in jail. But after he escaped from residential school, he actually went and lived with his family for a time, learned how to use the tools and the machinery, and then he went off and used this as a trade. So there's this very like intricate and important relationship between many different communities, not just the Indigenous community, but that's kind of like why we're trying to work to continue those efforts, because with newcomers like Ukrainians who are coming from Ukraine right now, they don't necessarily know about that relationship. And there are still stigmatisms and stereotypes attached to Indigenous folks where like, if you're not from that specific generation, like that specific wave of immigration, you won't know about it. And so it's kind of our responsibility to make sure people are like aware of that. And to what you said earlier about kind of like bringing other community members together to make, you know, Perehe or Varenike, as you guys call it. The Toronto clubs did invite other student organizations to come and participate with them. And the idea was just that, was to bring together different communities that might have similar like cultural backgrounds or similar like food making so that we can just, you know, unify.
Got it. Thank you. One of the reasons why I was asking, because I heard about some connection between like actually Canadian Indigenous people and some early Ukrainians, like resettlers or whatever, and especially like a term of the very hustkas, like this kind, that they were like very common between the actual natives because they were like very bright. The funniest thing that they actually were produced in Japan. That's a whole other thing. But yeah. Anyway, thank you for that extended answer.
Cool. Yeah, lots of interesting stories to hear. I feel like we could have gone talking more and more longer, but I won't take much of your time. So thank you very much for joining us tonight for this discussion. Thank you very much for your questions and participation. And yeah, if there is anything that we can communicate further, please feel free to keep in touch and let us also do the same thing.
Yeah, Daka, thanks for reaching out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dania. Thank you,
Good luck
Gabriela.
with everything. Also, Dottie, who's your VP,
Yes.
he's one of my close friends, so I have a personal connection to your board. I don't know where he is tonight.
Great.
Anyway.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Okay. Hey, Maria, can you stay for just a second? So I was thinking they were very good at explaining their like endowment and all of that things, and I understand that